So welcome everybody to today's MeTEOR's virtual expo. Thank you so much for attending. Today our guests are going to be talking about driving student engagement and participation through esports. So we're really excited about our topic of conversation today. We're going to focus on three areas for our presentation today. First, we're going to talk about what is the community of esports. Then we're going to talk about the technology, the hardware, and some safety concerns that you need to be aware of through esports. And lastly, I'm going to share with you a few environment designs that schools have put into place that really showcase their esports competitions. So our first guest today is Jason Kirby. Jason is the president and COO of High School Esports League. This is the largest and longest running scholastic esports league with over 3,000 schools and 80,000 student participants. Jason is responsible for the growth and partnerships to help make sure that esports are available to all students across North America. And as we know, with COVID-19, online community building is crucial, and esports is a critical part of maintaining relationships during this time. So we're really excited to hear what our guests have to say today. Welcome, Jason. Thank you for attending with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's get started. The first question, as you know, many of our students are often disengaged in school, or they don't feel comfortable participating in really physical sports. Can you share with us what esports is for that novice, for those people in our audience that are not fully aware of what esports is, and how it provides a collaborative space for those students that might often feel disengaged at school?
Love that question. So simplest way to put esports, define esports. Esports is competitive video games, to kind of simplify it at its core. And, it's the organization of competition amongst, competitors. And, what we focused on in bringing this, to schools is, making that competition accessible as possible. And why it's important for engaging students, in particular at-risk or disengaged students, is when you factor the statistic that 90% of high school students are playing video games to some degree, whether it be mobile or online or PC. It's a very large audience, and even those kids that may not be participating in other extracurriculars, odds are they're playing video games in their home, their basement, their bedrooms, usually on the open internet, and sometimes very toxic internet. And when you bring the esports, organized video game competitions into the classroom with adult supervision, with like-minded peers, kids start to realize the benefits of other extracurricular activities such as baseball, football, and other sports, of that camaraderie, that accountability, that responsibility that comes with team collaboration and team sports. And so it creates a much safer environment than just playing video games online with no structure, no correlation to anything. Creates a safe space for those students, gets them excited, gives them a reason to be excited to come to school, because who doesn't get excited about playing video games at school, especially when most schools have banned them previously. They get to brag and say they're on the esports team. And so and I'll touch on other topics as we go on, but that's, what's a real motivator. And when you have kids that are passionate about something at school, they tend to do better in school. That's historically seen with most extracurricular activities.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Esports really sounds like a great way to get students involved. Absolutely. I was not one of those people that wanted to go out and do the sports, so I actually probably would have really enjoyed this had it been around. So I'm curious, prior to COVID-19, what was a typical season of esports like for a school?
So when schools come to our platform, they sign up, they create their accounts, they have a usually teacher admin or administrator admin account, and they invite their students to be on their club account, their school account, and then they assign them to different rosters that are associated with different games. So we offer around 13 different games. I guess last season we offered around 12, and these students compete over an 8-week season. Regular season matches, competing against different opponents. We have ranking systems, so winners play winners, losers play losers, so it's a little bit more equal and fair competition to make it fun. And then that leads off to a playoff series and a championship where we crown the ultimate champions, which leads to scholarship prizing. We pay out up to about $1,000 per winner on the roster. So for games like Overwatch that have 6 kids on the starting roster, there's $6,000 paid out, $1,000 in scholarships paid out to each student, and that changes per season. But those rewards, but that's one of the huge exciting, things. These kids are not just competing for bragging rights, they're competing for future scholastic advancement and scholarship funding, which is really exciting. And, we support the entire country and even North America as well. When it comes to Canada, we have maybe 75 schools in Canada and growing. And so, we're very excited about the offering, and the students typically, we encourage the students to play at school, but as you'll come to learn, if you're going and talking to schools, not all of them have funding or have prioritized funding for these types of things. And so they'll either play at home or they'll play at a land center nearby. But what we're really pushing towards, and why we talk to organizations like yourselves, is to help schools get the equipment they need to compete in the classroom, because it's just exponentially more beneficial to the students to stay at school, be in school with adult supervision, no traveling required, and keep them on a safe space out on campus.
Love that. What's the process for then forming an esports league at a school?
Yep. So it's really easy. We have a whole dedicated customer success team to partner with us. So all they have to do is reach out through our website or through one of our partners. Our success team will basically hold their hand all the way through the process, get them any documents they need, get the questions answered, help them figure out what games to compete in, help them look at funding options, whether it be working with the Varsity Esports Foundation, working with resources like Fund My Team that help fundraising capacity. And there's also, we're a STEM accredited program. So schools can leverage that to go out for STEM grants when trying to fund their programs. And then we help them organize how to get the word out, how to encourage students to participate. Last fall and coming this fall, assuming schools are open, we ship out loot crates. These loot crates include swag and variety of different items to encourage students to come to an esports club event, and they kind of hand those out as swag to kind of drum up awareness and appeal, and that helps recruit students for the program. And then from there, they get on our platform, they form the rosters, they identify who's playing who. Schools can create as many rosters as they want, so then they can compete as many games as they want. We don't restrict that. We just make sure that it's one student per game. So you don't have one student, on 5 different rosters for the same game, because that wouldn't make sense. And then, we try to work with the IT departments to make sure they have all the proper ports open to enable access to certain game servers to be able to compete in multiplayer. This is often overlooked, and so it's something we always encourage and provide documentation on what ports to open for what games, so that they're able to compete. And then we something that's actually recent is we just signed a deal with the NJCAAE, which is for junior colleges throughout America, and the ECAC, which is East Coast Athletic Conference for colleges, to help get students access to recruiting opportunities. And allow those colleges to be able to, or allow students to opt in for recruiting opportunities and scholarship opportunities, which is really unique to us. And then we have, this is our upcoming schedule between fall 2020, winter 2021, and spring. We also do we have summer running right now for 2020. So we run 4 tournaments in HSEL. One thing that we haven't discussed, and I just kind of put it out there, we also are launching middle school esports league. So that's for middle schools. So that's another avenue if you're talking to middle schools about esports. We're also providing a competitive opportunity for middle schools. But so we offer these 4 different tournaments throughout the year. We offer between 12 and 14 games each tournament. And it's all about creating a space for these students to engage, have fun, brag about their accomplishments, learn from their failures, and collaborate and communicate with their coaches to get better.
Wonderful. So you've shared a lot of advantages already, but are there some other advantages to really participate in esports if a school only had so much funding that they were trying to figure out what they were going to put their funding towards?
Yeah, so we are working with, the advantages, one, we talked about STEM, a STEM accredited program, but we also have a STEM accredited curriculum, which is gaming concepts that we did in partnership with Dr. Christy Custard and Michael Russell. Out of Wichita. They've created this curriculum that focuses on social emotional learning, as well as digital citizenship. Involving this type of curriculum usually can provide some funding and support for schools. I mentioned the Varsity Esports Foundation that helps provide funding resources for schools and grants to cover their league fees. in particular, so specifically Title I schools, free and reduced lunch programs. Other advantages is, in some of the stats, when we did a study with Dr. Christy Custard and Michael Russell, is we noticed particularly at-risk students saw a jump of their GPA by 1.7, so an increase of 1.7.
That's awesome.
So you're talking about your students that are struggling the most, that have the most adversity in front of them. They're finding solace and a sense of belonging in the esports program, and that's helping lift them up and bring back their desire to want to be involved in school because they have something that they want to be there for. We saw their class attendance go up by 10%, and just overall general enthusiasm about school improved. And so, yeah, sure, we have, students that are not at risk that are participating in other programs. They'll play football in the fall and esports in the summer or in the spring and whatever combination otherwise. But we're usually finding, I think it was about 80% of the last survey we ran, those students participated in nothing. Outside of showing up to class, they didn't participate in any extracurricular activities until they joined the esports programs.
Well, what games are available? I'm curious, because there's a ton of games out there for online gaming. Do you have very specific games for esports? Yeah,
so here's kind of an overview of most of them. And we can offer more games, less games. It really comes down to the school deciding what game is right for them. Some schools have some very strong opinions on tactical shooter games that involve team, collaboration back and forth. And so they don't play those games. But in reality, the stats show that those are hands down our most popular games that yield the highest return on impact to students. And of course, there's no statistical evidence in any way, shape, or form that links violence to video games. So many studies that debunk that. In fact, the benefits of involving students in the classroom with adult supervision dramatically reduces any violence significantly because they have friends, they have a sense of belonging, they have an identity with their peers. But these games here, so we have Super Smash Bros, very popular game, Rocket League, FIFA, the sport games, NBA 2K, Madden, all rated E for everyone, so it's accessible to any school without restriction. We have Minecraft survival games, and we're working on expanding those opportunities there. Hearthstone, which is a kind of a card strategy game. Valorant, which is the newest, hottest tactical shooter game out there, kind of blends Overwatch and CS:GO together. We're introducing Street Fighter this year, so 1v1 fighter game for the first time. Fortnite, everyone does Fortnite, obviously a main staple. CS:GO, Rainbow Six, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So these are all kind of the leading esports games that are out there. Some are team-based, some are 1v1. And so you kind of have that flexibility, as a teacher or coach to kind of give whatever student, is gravitating towards. Some are not, they want to be a part of something, but they're not really good at some other games. They can still do like 1v1. But the team sports are the ones that have the biggest impact on the students because they have to work together. They have to strategize before the match. They have to discuss how they address each map, how they're going to do what in what scenarios. And just kind of watching those team dynamics is extremely rewarding.
Love it. And interesting enough, as old as I am, I actually recognize some of the names of these. So I don't feel so old anymore. I'm curious, you've had a lot of partners and you partner with a lot of people. If I were to ask them, what would they say is the most encouraging thing about students that are participating that they find?
I don't want to sound like broken record, but it's engagement. It's that sense of belonging. It's that identity of connecting with friends, and more importantly, just keeping it in the classroom makes a big impact. It associates their positivity and excitement of something that they love with school, which, be honest, like not every kid loves school. So this is a great kind of positive affirmation for schools to have this association by offering esports and opening it up to school, to kids. And we've seen programs start with 3-4 kids just wanting to have a video game club or an esports club. They find out about us. They, they show it to the teacher. They show the organization, the structure, the opportunity. The teachers has no idea what they're looking at, but they see these excited kids that are motivated to do something. So they enable them. They sign up with us. They compete. And, within a year, 2 years, 3 years, we've been doing this since 2012. We see programs skyrocket to 250 kids. at a single school.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
you're looking at like 5–10% of the entire student body population wanting to be a part of this club, and they find different roles. They're not just competing. You have the social media manager who's doing and learning practical career skills and marketing and building their social following. You have the broadcasters, the shoutcasters, the IT support. And so you kind of find this whole ecosystem of support for the esports clubs as they start to grow and scale, where you have your stars, the players themselves that are the talent and everyone's kind of rallying behind them, but then you kind of building the support infrastructure around them. Just like you have in high school football, you have like the video club come out and video everything. Right. But in this case, it's usually they're a part of the club in some capacity, which is really exciting.
Love it. And you mentioned that you can be in regular sports, and you're finding that a lot of the students that are in physical sports are also wanting to be a part of the esports leagues as well. So that's, to me, that is great because it brings, and it doesn't segment people into different places in high school or even middle school, that we all have some things in common. I love that.
Yeah, I presented at one of our schools, and you had kind of your kid that was kind of shy, introvert, kind of expressed that he was an introvert, although he's presenting in front of all these people, which is phenomenal. But you have this, kind of the stereotypical, jock baseball player, and they're best buds because of the esports program. And you're kind of, breaking down barriers and separating people. And you have girls playing on the esports team, you have boys, you have people from different backgrounds, genders, identities, races, all playing together because there's no limiting factor. Even there's so many accommodations for people with disabilities as well at esports. So it's truly the most accessible opportunity for competitive sports for so many different people.
Awesome. I'm just curious, do you see that there's going to be any difference in how esports is going to be played this year in the fall with the COVID-19 versus last year?
Yeah, it's really going to depend. And what we've done really well, and we've always preached, is like we're all about the students and the schools and what's right for them. As much as we want schools to be, forced to play in a classroom and competing, like that's just not realistic these days. It wasn't even realistic before, because some schools just didn't have the resources. So we're going to see a mix of, schools investing heavily into this, realizing that this potentially could be the only sport they can offer as a means to kind of rally students. We've been talking to some schools that are trying to stream their matches to kind of replace their traditional sports, to kind of have school support, school morale. Definitely investing in jerseys so the kids can kind of wear their jerseys if they are going to school, to kind of rep them.
I like that.
Gives such a morale boost to the kids to be
absolutely
walking tall with their jerseys.
I love it.
Yeah. So
can they letter in has that come about yet? High school letter?
So it's on a school by school basis, sometimes at a district level, whether to sanction as a varsity sport. We're trying to push that agenda, but we also realize that it's not necessarily the youngest generation making that decision. And so they're still a little hesitant, a little reserved in terms of their interpretation of, is it a sport or is it not a sport? And that doesn't matter. Look at what's happening. Let's support what's happening about getting these kids engaged and not have meaningless debates around whether it's a sport or not, as much as I think it's a sport in terms of the coordination and teamwork and responsibility that comes with it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That's such great information. And for those people that are our guests today, hopefully it's giving you some great information about how to get started in esports. And we know that we've put in Jason's information into the chat box if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to him and want to get more answers from him. Sebastian, were there any questions that anybody put in for Jason that you'd like to ask him live right now?
Yes, Jason, one of the questions is from Fernando, and he wanted to know if there is an age limit on who can join the team.
So I know it's in middle school. So for middle schools, we're going to be making it competitive from 5th grade to 8th grade. And then college, it's going to be 9th grade to 12th grade, high school. And so, but with middle schools, the kids won't be creating or managing their own accounts. That will be either created by the teacher or the student's parents for privacy protection. But yeah, it's under the assumption that the students will be within those age groups, grades.
Great. And there's also another question from Nicola. They want to find out, they're very excited about the opportunities regarding middle school esports, and she would like to know where she can find out more information about it,
Yep.
about the middle school leagues.
Yeah, so most of the details are coming out next week. It's middleschoolEsports.com. I think the league kicks off in September, mid-September. It'll be an 8-week season with playoffs and championships, but it's going to be more focused on casual opportunities and more about engagement, less so about being the best, but we still have that element to it. And we have more accessible games like Just Dance, which I think could be fun, in particular trying to recruit girls to be participant. So we're trying to make a real big push for gender inclusion and diversity inclusion in the games that we're offering to kind of get them in younger and kind of provide some mentorship and guidance for them to kind of aspire to be involved in esports more than so now, because to face it, it is majority men that are, or boys that are participating, and we're trying to bridge that gap by being more inclusive of the games that we offer. So that's a step we're taking.
Awesome, thank you. That's all the questions that we have for Jason.
Well, I just saw another. How far in advance do they need to sign up for a season, and the cost? You have that, or if they need to reach out to you for that?
I don't like saying this, but usually about 60-70% of schools finish their signups about a week before the tournament starts.
Okay.
So don't stress out.
But so no hurry.
Yeah, okay. You can contact us at any time, sign up at any time a week prior to the tournament starting, which I think is going to be September 21st or 14th. But you can find out more at middleschoolEsports.com and hscl.org. That's where you can find pretty much all the details about our upcoming schedule and tournaments, pricing, and everything there.
Awesome. And we've been putting some of the information for Jason to get for you to contact Jason directly, and feel free to email myself as well. We'll put my information in at the end. So again, Jason, thank you so much for that information. It's extremely helpful, especially for schools that we hear the term esports, but we really didn't know what it was. So now everyone has a really good idea about it. Thank you. So now we are excited to get those esports leagues started. But we always have those, what are the obstacles? Because, there's always obstacles in education to some degree. We hate that, but we have to be proactive and really think about those things. So we invited our next guest to come and outline what are some things, obstacles that might be addressed that we need to be proactive in addressing for esports, and what are some solutions that for schools that are on a budget. So I am extremely pleased to introduce Elliot Levine. He is the Chief Academic Officer of STS Education. He was named to the inaugural list of the top 100 influencers in EdTech by EdTech Digest magazine. He brings over 25 years experience across the field of education technology and several years in academic esports. For those administrators out there, he's a former K-12 district administrator. He's an adjunct professor, a past columnist for American School Board's Journal. He's done it all. He is also the co-founder of Paper Basket, awarded Best New Product of 2018 by EdTech Digest. This product tracks device use and analytics, helping schools to really uncover their underused digital resources. And he's also the co-founder and chief product officer for Healthy Player One software that combats bullying and injuries in esports. Hopefully I got all that right, Elliot. So welcome, Elliot.
It did, but you're reminding me just how old I am now. Oh, man.
That happens. That happens. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Ruth.
I really appreciate it. We're all kind of pumped and excited about getting started with esports. And as I had conversations with you in the past couple days, you shared with me that you really felt like there were 3 key challenges that schools need to be proactive in thinking about when it comes to scholastic esports. And then you had some solutions that you could also share with those. So yeah. Could you share with our guests what those 3 buckets are? And then we'll talk a little bit more about your solutions.
Sure. I mean, I think it's phenomenal that we have already seen the adoption of 3,000 high schools, as Jason pointed out, involved in scholastic esports. Considering we have about 33,000 secondary schools across the country, that's a great adoption rate. The challenge is now for the next 3,000 schools. And what are some of the realizations that have to occur here? Whether it's in the school or for remote participation, as we're hearing a lot of schools are going to be looking into for the next year. And let's look at that, because first off, today, in the last few years, we have now seen the tide shift that more than 50% of public school children qualify for free and reduced lunch. 40% of schools in the US are now considered to be high poverty schools. They're meeting the definition from Title I for the number of free and reduced, and that also usually also equates to their budgets. So number one issue that we're hearing from the families and from the schools, they may not have the budgets to get into this. And usually the difficult part of this is coming up with the actual technology to be able to do it. And then second, and Jason really pointed to that, and let me tell you, I'm a huge fan of the HSEL curriculum that they did in conjunction. I think Microsoft was one of the sponsoring organizations. Incredible stuff. And having curriculum and codes of conduct are phenomenal starting points. But one of the problems that we have to also address is the toxic nature of esports, both in terms of stress, bullying, and also on another level is to look at the propensity for injury. It may sound like a laughing matter, and recently in the news, one of the biggest League of Legends players out of China, he goes by the name of Uzi, announced his retirement just a few weeks ago. He has about 5 million followers. He is retiring at the ripe old age of, wait for it kids, 23. He has a wrist injury that's not healing. He has hypertension, and he has now type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
And that's from excessive play and ongoing stress from the game itself. So we really need to address those. We want to make sure that no matter what we're doing, that we're being inclusive for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic background, as well as that we're making it inclusive for every young person to be involved. Because unfortunately, I think if you visit a lot of schools' esports programs, you'll hear, oh yeah, we have young women involved in ancillary activities. But if you look at the male-female ratios of actual players, we're seeing a very high propensity towards males, even though we know from gaming statistics, nearly just as many young women are playing esports games as men.
Wow, okay. Interesting. So let's go to the first one, because I know you have solutions. The budget. So we know that that's the theme. What suggestions do you have for schools then if they don't have the budget, and how can you help them to think about the funding, because this is something they want to do?
Perfect. And I always like to do this as a little bit of a guessing game. If we can jump to the next slide.
Okay.
For everybody out there, and I don't want you to actually have to guess, one of these devices happens to be 3 years old. One of these devices is brand new. Most people aren't really able to tell the difference. But I will say the one on the left, as it's pointed out, is actually 50 to 60% cheaper than the new one. What we find is with refurbished technology, and in K-12 education, we snubbed our noses at refurbished technology for many years. But that was at a time when processor generations were such rapidly changing and software was advancing so fast, we needed entirely new systems, motherboards, everything to handle the workload. The change from generation to generation now in processing power is limited. Plus, if you look at the actual games themselves, most games, their system requirements are based upon typically about 4 to 5 years behind us. So if you want to set the expectation, you don't necessarily need to buy bleeding edge gaming technology other than to have, hey, I'm driving a Lamborghini at 30 miles an hour down the block to go to 7-Eleven and get my Slurpee. Yeah, I've got the horsepower. I'm never able to actually use it. So if we can jump ahead, we'll talk about this, because one of the things that STS Education does is offers one option for a refurbished gaming desktop CPU. And this machine meets all of the requirements from every game out there. League of Legends, Overwatch, Fortnite, you know, the big three. But all of them there, you can actually see right on our webpage, and I'll put that link in the chat window if anybody's interested. But we have links to all the system requirements and to let you know if this configuration meets or exceeds those specs. And if we can actually go backwards one slide for just a second, if that's okay. We've recently partnered with the North American Scholastic Esports Federation to promote this nationwide because they want to help more schools that have budgetary concerns really be able to afford the technology. And they don't need to have second-class equipment to do it. So first, the equipment here, whether it's the graphics card, the monitor, the gaming keyboard, mouse, it's all new equipment that comes with it. And that comes with 1-year warranties. The main desktop unit itself, but for the new graphics card, everything else on it comes with a lifetime parts replacement warranty. And we're now producing a series of videos with Nassif to help show people not only how a computer works on the inside of a computer, but how to troubleshoot, repair, and upgrade PCs in their schools if they even want to try to do this themselves.
Wow, that's great. And I love a good deal, so that's awesome. And
yes.
The partnership, it's great that they're being proactive and thinking that a lot of schools don't have that budget. So what can we do to help? We don't want that to be a deterrent that schools don't have the option to be in esports.
Exactly. And again, we've had some schools that have looked at, well, maybe we'll buy gaming laptops to send home with the kids. Gaming laptops, first off, you're working with a 14 or 15-inch screen, which can be really challenging for gameplay and induce eye strain when the most common configurations are up around 24-inch screens. That's a difference of more than 60% viewing area.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that makes an impact, even for young people. Plus, gaming laptops tend to walk. They can also easily be damaged. They're very hard to repair and upgrade. By working with gaming PCs, they're not as likely to walk, and they're very easy for schools to service, repair, and upgrade themselves.
That's awesome. That's good. Good to know. So you shared then that there's 3 buckets. So you shared with us the solution to the first bucket, if I can talk.
Yep.
The second and third challenges you mentioned are the possibility of student bullying during online gaming, and then, of course, the injuries from excessive play. Can you share what you mean by these two and what might be some of the solutions that your group has found?
Sure. And again, I'm not meaning to scare or frighten people or, you know, poo-poo on what we're doing in esports. This is phenomenal stuff we're doing. But all the more reason that friends have to be honest with friends. And at some point, you know, even just regular sports activities, we started seeing lawsuits pop up against schools districts for football and other sports where injuries or behavior in locker rooms was going unreported. The same thing can happen here, because if we look, K-12 Blueprint and Intel has talked about the toxic environment that bullying and harassment exists. And even if your school or your team has a code of conduct, whether or not there's a coach standing over the players, you don't know what they're saying into the headset most of the time. So that's one area we need to address. And honestly, in recent statistics, 65% of gamers have reported that they were personally experienced what they would consider to be a severe form of harassment. You know, bodily threats of injury, repeated stalking behaviors.
Wow.
And on the flip side, there's a propensity for injury from excessive play. Now, currently, there is no data on high school esports player injuries, but on the collegiate level, there is. And what we found is more than half of college esports players are reporting one or more symptoms related to a computer-based or repetitive stress injury attributed to esports. And that is 56% around eye strain, headaches, 42% around head and neck pain, 36% around wrist and hand pain. So again, how does a school make sure that students are playing safely and, you know, keeping some sort of track about that so students aren't injured, and at the same time they're protecting the institution? And you know, I've spent way too many years, and I care to admit there's more gray hairs in my head than ever, and I think each one is attributed to some student in my life. But, you know, I've been working in esports, you know, now with STS and previously with Hewlett-Packard. And these were some of the challenges that we kind of came across. And as part of it, I was part of the founding team that created a new solution called Healthy Player One. And if we could jump to that next slide. What we wanted to do was try to figure out how technology can proactively help school officials, and whether it's middle school children, high school children, even college students, how do we give them some degree of protection? The goal here isn't to catch kids and punish them. The goal is to deter the behavior. And I'll give you a perfect example, Ruth. Every school and every district has a policy on kids, how kids have to, you know, act and behave in hallways and school buses.
Correct.
Back to my day. And in the 90s, school buses were the wild, wild west. But we had policies. It was in the student handbook. Kids had to follow it. No. The second we started putting cameras on the school buses, and these are the big giant VHS box things, inside of a little sealed unit, and we had to trick the kids because they got smart. They said, "Oh, I don't see the red light. No camera. We're good." So we put fake red lights in all of the school buses. Just the mere knowledge and presence, it's there, changes the behavior.
I can believe that.
If that's not good enough, then the technology helps. So for bullying prevention, the software is actually installed on the gaming PC, and it is constantly recording the video and the audio feed to the students. And if a student feels that somebody, you know, has gone beyond, you know, trash talk, and it's really crossed the line, they're going to just very subtly in the middle of gameplay happen to hit 2 keys on their keyboard. It's going to flag the recording and box not only what they've just experienced, it's going to go back 5 minutes to show you what led up to it. That file is going to get compressed and overnight get uploaded to a cloud dashboard where the coach or director can check into it, see who was involved, and figure out how to best resolve it. And again, it's not about the punishment, it's about educating, informing, and just improving our digital citizenship. And from an ergonomic monitoring, what we're doing is setting, again, following kind of the behavioral and the conduct guidelines that the school is setting. What is the policy for that school? After how much time of play should a student take a break? So it's going to force them to take a break. Let's say the school says you have to take a 15-minute break every hour. So once 60 minutes comes along, they're on a break, and that child can't log into another machine. They're blocked out. At the same time, the system is doing survey questions to ask the student before they begin, before they log in, and when they're on breaks and when they log out, if they're experiencing any of the following symptoms. And ideally, what we want students to say is, none, I'm not experiencing any. But if they are, it's going to give them exercises and activities to do, and it's also going to start to build a log so that if a student starts showing, hey, I've reported wrist pain 3 times, it's going to flag it to school officials and even potentially the school nurse to look into it, much the same way that we would require concussion testing for football players. If we see them have a certain number of injuries, they have to go for a CAT scan. That's just a matter of standard practice. Mm-hmm. Having that sort of methodology and log in place protects the school system. Because let's say a year from now, a student says, well, I needed carpal tunnel surgery, and the parents bring in a lawyer and say, well, they got injured at your school. You now have a log to show, well, we have a log for the last year that shows this student never played more than X number of minutes without a required break, and we have a year's worth of logs where they never reported one issue. So what we're trying to do here is we are trying to make it more inclusive and accessible to every school, but we also want to make sure that schools going forward are protected so that any of the negative aspects of esports, whether it's injuries or bullying, don't come to really kind of creep up and show their evil head in their districts.
Love it. And I love that your company is being proactive and seeking solutions for this, for gaming and for gamers. As anything in education, we want our students to be able to be successful in esports, and we most certainly want to ensure that they're safe and that and that things are being considered, because you just never know what you don't know until you don't want to wait too late. So thank you so much for this great information.
Oh, my pleasure.
Sebastian, did anybody have any questions for Elliot in the chat box?
Yes, I don't know if this one's for Elliot or for Jason, but Baba was wondering, can any high school or middle school get grants for league fees and equipment from VarsityEsportsFoundation.org?
Yeah, so I could speak to that. So with the foundation, we work with the foundation for them to subsidize and or grant reduced fees. So for our tournament fees and or license fee can be significantly reduced based on that school being Title I or free and reduced lunch is kind of the primary focus. So those schools can qualify, but I would highly encourage any school to reach out to the foundation and see if they are able to receive support.
Awesome. And then I think there was another question about where we can learn more about the Healthy Player one, and then there is the link.
And yeah, I put the links to both Healthy Player One and to our page at STS that talks about our refurbished esports gaming PCs. And again, both organizations have partnered with Nassif. Healthy Player One is also partnered with NACAD. We are currently piloting the software this summer with a number of schools in California and the Midwest, as well as some university programs. And it will be officially launched post-Labor Day.
Awesome, awesome. Well, if I was a student right now, I would definitely be very excited about this, and hopefully some of our administrators and guests today are their wheels are spinning right now, like thinking about those students that don't always get engaged, and this is just a great avenue for them. They're playing the games anyhow, like you said, Jason, and they're out there playing, so why not play? And I love the idea of some scholarship money. Maybe when my kids were young, that would have helped them, but not a little too late. So thank you both, Jason and Elliot, for your time today. As I shared with everybody, there was 3 things we were going to talk about. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what we do at MeTEOR. We work with partners such as Jason and Elliot and the STS and eSports, and we really like to look at what's going on in the schools, and then we help to design those spaces so that it's successful. And we do realize that a lot of our clients and a lot of our schools right now may not be going back next year. Or they might be going back periodically, or maybe just in shifts or whatever. But we wanted to just provide a little bit and share with you real quick. I promise it'll be real quick. Just share with you some of these eSports spaces. I call them eSports Spaces that we have created. So you get kind of an idea of what we mean and what Jason and Elliot are talking about when you give a designated space for them. Just like you have a football field for football players, it feels like it's their own, and they feel really captivated, and they feel truly that it's their place. So if you can go to the next slide, you can see that we really work with, we have designers at MeTEOR, and we really work with them in order to put these spaces type together here. And I cannot read these off of this, so I'm going to pull my little thing over here where I can see. For some reason, I can't see. But you can see that there's different spaces here within these eSports room. It could be a dedicated space, but you got to think about what's going to really be happening within those spaces. So you can see up in the corner, there's some soft seating that might be there for different students, that allows them for conversations, for them to be able to work together. You can see the spaces in the middle that really group the students together so that they are working if they're competing and such. You've got your presentation area for the equipment, because a lot of these are going to be, if I'm understanding correctly, they're going to be shared out virtually as the gaming is happening. What I love, and if you can go to the next slide, MJ, is that you can see over at the bottom, just like in sports where we have the stands, you have people that are watching people actually play games. I know my son's a big gamer, and he has shared with me that people pay to watch other people. How do they win these games? So space that people can go and watch, and also, as Elliot was sharing, a space that they can go when they need to take those breaks that are mandatory, so that they're not getting into that battle fatigue, and they're not using they're taking those breaks periodically and such. So we work in MeTEOR to really help create, what is the space, what do you want it to look like, how much space do you actually have, how big do you think the room needs to be, how many competitors are you going to have. we take all that into mind with the client, and then on the next couple slides, and you can just kind of flip through them, MJ, but you can see here, this is that exact, what I just shared with you, the vision, that was just a drawing, this is it come to life. So you can see really what these spaces look like. And I can tell you, when I look at these, I'm like, as a student, if I walked into a classroom like this in my school, I would not recognize this type of classroom. This doesn't look like your traditional type of classroom where we're all sitting in straight rows, or we try, hopefully we don't want them in straight rows, but typically this looks very exciting and inviting. It looks like a space that some of these students will really call their own, because they really truly are trying to find their place in the ecosystem of high school, which, you know, cannot be fun sometimes for some of us. So just wanted to share with you some of those things, so that if that is something that you also are interested in, we've been putting up Jason's information. If you're interested in specific questions about esports, if you're interested in Elliot's information about STS and about the all of the different tools that he has, the refurbished things and stuff. And if you also think we'd really like to put a space, and we'd like it to be our designated space for this, you can reach out to me. They just put, I think, yep, they just put my email in there as well. So reach out to me, and we can have someone, you know, just, it's a free service. We just can talk to you, figure out if there's some way we can help support that for you as well. We hope that this has been an entertaining day, and it's very informational more than anything. Hopefully that you're starting to think about how you can get those students that are in the back of the classroom that don't often participate, and we want to bring them to the front of the classroom by building a league at your school or at your district, and esports is a great way to do that. We encourage you always to find new avenues to get those students so that they feel successful in school. And I love the data that we received on that as well, that academically it is actually a great avenue. So thank you again for your time, and we hope that you're able to attend future webinars. Thank you, Jason and Elliot, again. We really appreciate it, and have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks,
Okay, guys.
Thank you.